We've all heard the phrase elephant in the room, and to be honest, some of us still cohabitate with them. What's your story? Let's talk about it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Elephant Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Romellus Wilson, and as I always say, I'm grateful for you to be here. Today, I have a very, very, very special guest with me, and someone that hails from my childhood, from my past, someone that I've known since elementary school, literally. And not only is she a good friend, though we, again, life has taken us in different directions, but this is somebody I've always been pretty cool with since we've been young. But she also has a pretty powerful and impactful story and an experience that she went through that I reached out to Kayla a while ago about mentioning her story. And I want to introduce you all to my friend because I think this story is really impactful and I think it's really relevant, especially in today's day and age, especially with Kayla being a healthcare worker. So I want her to dive into her story. But before we dive into any of those aspects, let me introduce my friend. Now I won't introduce her how I used to know her. Now she married, kids, whole new life now. So anyway, I want to introduce my friend Kayla McMahan. I want to welcome you to Elephant Stories Podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Seriously, I've been waiting to just chat with you and just catch up like old times. I'm so excited.
I'm excited to have you. Like seriously, I know it's very surreal having this moment. Like again, as two. I'm assuming, two 30-something-year-olds.
Right?
Like, I was literally just looking at our yearbook, like, because I was like, what? Because again, because you've been married for 10 years, you mentioned, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
I think because I'm so used to your last name over these past 10 years, I was like, what was Kayla's last name before? And it took me forever. So I literally had to look up the yearbook and I was like, let me find where did your picture? Oh, yeah.
Is that senior year too?
This is 2006. So what was that? Our sophomore year?
Sophomore year.
Yeah. Look at Kayla right there. That's my friend right there. Look at Sophia.
My Green Day shirt. I was so stoked to wear that. My mom was like, I can't believe you wore a Green Day shirt for your picture and not something nicer. And I was like,
Kayla, it was totally you.
Me.
You, Jesse, Aaron's, like all y'all feel like y'all were like the little like the crew, like all of y'all, like so. I'm
Jesse
totally
is still my bestie.
Is she?
Yes. I actually introduced her to her husband, which is wild.
Are you serious? Yeah, because I saw she got married recently. Okay.
Yes.
Congrats.
I worked with her husband at DePaul. And we all went to a party together to watch the Blues game when the Blues were in the playoffs for the Stanley Cup. Mm-hmm. And we went to Ethel's and they just like hit it off. And I was like, I did that.
That's See, come on. And Ethel's, if y'all don't know, is a St. Louis classic or St. Charles County classic. Let me say that.
Yes, absolutely.
That's awesome, Kayla. I just want to seriously thank you before we even start because I know this story is personal. It's serious and it's heavy at times. And I know this was a life-changing situation for you before we even dive into it. So I just want to say, one, before we even start, thank you for having or even being willing to be vulnerable enough to share this conversation and actually share this part of your story because I know this was really impactful. And so we'll dive into those whole aspects, but the first piece that I really want to kind of like start off is, again, like I said, me and Kayla have known each other since since elementary school, and again after college or after high school, like we went our separate ways. I left Missouri and moved to California.
Right?
Like I went across the other side of the country and everything else, and I know you ended up kind of traversing into healthcare for your professional work, and I know you ended up going the paramedic route.
Mm-hmm.
So what was kind of your motivation? Because I don't remember us, again, what I remember of you in school versus like what you ended up doing in two different things. Because listen, you was crazy in school.
I was. I didn't. That's the thing is like I'm with my kids now. I'm like, do not do what I did in school.
Yeah.
Like, I was the bad. I'm the one that we're gonna learn what not to do from. My husband got like great grades, great GPA, and I'm like, I barely graduated.
Right.
But it's fine. We're here now.
You made it though, okay? You made it. That's all that matters, period. We got through. So what kind of led you into healthcare? Like what was that kind of when did that end up becoming kind of a possibility for you? Or what
I actually didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't know where I wanted to go to college, or actually like I didn't really have a direction when I left high school. Mm-hmm. And my friend at the time was going to school to be a nurse, and I was like, okay, maybe like that's interesting. It's something different every day. And I talked to my mom and I was like, I kind of want to be a nurse. And she's like, well, I have a friend that works at a dialysis center. She can get you on, you can just test it out, see what you like. And I started at this dialysis center as a technician, and I was pretty much doing everything the nurses were doing, where I was like starting people on dialysis with those gigantic, scary needles that everybody hates. And one day I was just like, man, like literally, it was wild how this happened. But I was just sitting there and I was like, this job is not what I want to do. I want something different. And the next day, one of my patients ended up having a medical emergency at the office I was working at, and all these paramedics from the fire department and the EMS district came in. And seeing them doing what they were doing and just being so on top of it and walking in and controlling a scene and just being like, we got it, we're going to do it, bye. I was like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I was going to school at St. Charles Community College at the time, and I looked into their EMT program, and I don't think they had one at the time. I know now, I think they do. Um, and there was actually a school across the street called Respond Right Paramedic program, and I went to
Hmm.
them and put in my application and instantly fell in love with everything about it. Like my first class, we got uniforms, and I remember like we put on the uniforms, and I was like, man, I'm like, this is so cool. And then like just learning about all the different things, how your body works. I mean, it's fascinating. Like I love how learning about how the body works, learning everything about the body, just any medical thing is fascinating to me. But it was just something that I thought was different and it was exciting. And as soon as I got into it, I was like, this is exactly what I was meant to do. It was my favorite job I ever had.
So it was immediate. Wow. 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 Wow.
Yeah.
Because again, that field and that work and that line of work is no joke. And again,
No.
the just again, and I mention that because again, I feel like it's even more impactful to your story with what happens to you later on because in that work you have to be on top, but again it's literally life-saving, it's life or different.
Yes.
So some of these moments it's like we have to respond and react right now, so it does take a level, it takes a certain type of human to do that type of work. Someone thank you because
Thank
listen, we
you.
need y'all.
Thank
Listen,
you.
I live in Long Beach and I'll be so annoyed at the siren sometimes because I live near the hospital. I'm like, shut up, but then I'm like, thank God, because if it was me, get them sirens going and get out of the way
Right?
so I can get
Everybody
there.
move. Everybody
Right,
go. Let's go.
period.
Yeah.
So I think that's amazing that you ended up kind of, again, that just that one moment. It was just that one singular moment that was kind of like, I think that's what I want to do. And from there, you just kind of went with it.
Yeah. And it was something that like I had never like knew I wanted to do. And then when I started to get into it, my dad started or talked to me about it, and he's like, I wanted to be a firefighter when I got out of the Navy. And I was like, you did? And he goes, yeah. He's like, I kind of wanted to do that stuff. He's like, but when I got out, he's like, they weren't hiring, but he's like, it's interesting that you kind of went that direction because to be a paramedic in St. Louis City or St. Charles County, you do have to have firefighter just to be
Yeah.
duly licensed. So you can respond on scene to like car accidents first. If you're the first responders on scene, then that way you have a paramedic license and a firefighter license for other things too. They want everybody to be dual licensed.
Hmm.
So when I learned that you had to become a firefighter to like essentially, work on a truck, that's whenever I kind of was a little nervous because at the time it's not bad anymore, mind you. This was 10 years ago, and I
Yeah.
it sounds crazy to say, but 10 years ago women were not welcome in the fire district.
And coming from the county that we come from, I can assume that is more than likely probably very much true, especially back then, because it's,
Yes, and
yeah,
I like
that
it
makes
was
sense.
so, I mean, I applied for a like a sponsorship to go to fire academy out here, and I applied in my own county, and I was like, cool. And I did an interview, and there were 6 spots, there were 6 of us. I was like, this is a cakewalk. I was the only person that didn't get it, and I was the only female. And I was like,
Interesting.
hmm. And my friend was like, oh, they just they lost one of the spots, and I was like, okay, that happens, but it was a lot harder to get into the fire department back then. as a female, which, and nowadays it's, if you know somebody, you get right in, which is unfortunate too, but it all works out. I mean, I know and I love all the firefighters that I have worked with, so I can't say anything bad about them. At that time, it was just a very hard thing to get into if you didn't know anybody or if you weren't a white male.
Yeah, and if you didn't already have the connection in, so then it was difficult. Yeah. And also, I want to acknowledge to your dad as well, because I know, since then he has since passed, and I again
Mm-hmm.
just want to acknowledge because I know how important your guys' relationship was and how much of an influence he was in your life. I remember, I think there was one time, I don't know what we were doing in high school, but I don't remember me and you were driving somewhere and you were in my car. I don't know why I remember this to this day. We were somewhere either on, I think, Niles Road or one of those like back roads. And I don't know if
Yeah,
your dad lived back there or something, or your mom. Who was that who lived back there? I don't know
my
why.
mom lives up in Ost. Yeah,
Okay, I thought it was a made up
yeah.
memory. I was like, I think this is made up. I was like, but I'm gonna
No,
ask Kayla
it's
about it
legit.
because I'm like, I remember me driving. I think it was my little white Honda Civic, '94 Honda Civic, my first car,
Yes.
and we were going somewhere. And I'm like, I don't know where we were going, but you were in the car, and I think I was going to take you back home, or I don't know what we were doing, but I
I don't know
remember
what we
you
were
being in the
doing either, but
car.
I remember, yeah. I wonder if you were giving me a ride from school. I forget. Yeah, my mom's house is still off Nost. Yeah. And my dad lived off of Mexico.
There you go. Because I
Hmm.
remember elementary school. Where did you use? Did we start off in elementary school and then you went to South? Did you move or something
Yeah.
like
So
that
I
around that
went
period?
to, we went to the same elementary school for St. Peter's and then Lewis and Clark. And then my dad moved. Um, and then I went to my mom's house. And my mom was actually in the district of South, like now that the borders are all changed. But before then I went to Progress and then I went to South Middle. And then I went
Got
back to
you.
South High. Yeah.
Yeah, because I knew there was some periods where again you were kind of going. I feel like it was like several students again that ended up going either to Progress or South. Again now all those students all go to, I think all going to the East now. It's very weird, but anyway, yeah, I'm gonna get to the
Yes.
St. Louis history, but
Right. All the St. Louis
um,
schools are wild.
yeah, yeah. So so after you have this moment and you see these paramedics again kind of coming in and bossing and just kind of owning this moment, and it was like, wait a minute, that's something I feel like I can do. It's something I also want to do. You dive into the work. What's the beginning of your career like? Do you like what? How does that start? Once you get past this situation of the firefighters clearly discriminating against you in this situation, obviously this 10 years ago, so we'll give them
Yes.
credit now. But
Yes. It's
once you
gotten
get
much
past this
better now.
situation, thank God. What happens beyond that? Then, like, what happens once you start your career?
I started at Abbott Ambulance for a while.
Yeah.
And Abbott Ambulance runs all downtown St. Louis and transporting back and forth between area hospitals.
Hmm.
I was there and then I got my medic license and I started at DePaul. But when I started at DePaul, I didn't have my medic license yet. I actually started there when I had when I still had my EMT license. But DePaul is very rare in the fact that they hire paramedics to work in the ER. That was something that at the time no other hospital was doing. And now a lot of hospitals are hiring paramedics because it helps out with cost because we are cheaper to hire than nurses, even though we can do a lot of the same stuff.
Are they doing that
Uh,
to cut down on the time as well for the ER cut down for the ER time as well, or is it just
I
more
think
so
it just
just
cuts down on
again?
cost. It just cuts down on
Okay,
cost.
money.
And yep, it's all about money.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
so I was working at Abbey Ambulance and I liked it. I love being on a bus and running downtown because literally every call is different. You don't know what you're going to get. But when I say I'm going to be off at 7 o'clock, I mean an emergency comes in at 7 o'clock, then I probably might be off at 1 in the morning. Who knows? So it's just not cohesive to a life
Yeah.
with children.
Hmm.
So whenever I started, or when I started kind of just trying to plan out what I wanted to do, I found the paramedic position at DePaul um, and got hired on as a tech. Worked as a tech for about 6 months, and then worked as a paramedic just because I didn't have a position open at the time when I was hired. So I just worked there to get my foot in, and they were like, "Oh yeah, as soon as the position opens up, since you're already with the company, you push right in." And man, I loved it. Every single day is different, and it's DePaul is interesting in that the way the way St. Louis is set up, but DePaul is in a special area where you get a lot of stuff, like a lot of inner city stuff that you would get. I mean, it's just
And explain this context to people. The Paul Hospital is in the St. Louis metro area, and St. Louis is broken apart. just to interrupt really quick, so people have context for what you mean. St. Louis is broken apart in kind of like four quadrants. There's North County, South County, West County, and then there's St. Charles County, which is a whole separate white flight built county that started
I
from white flight. Like,
right? I
basically.
forget how crazy it is to be like, because people like whenever we also have the Blanchette Bridge, which separates St. Louis from St. Charles County from St. Louis County, and people will not want to cross that bridge because it's like another, it's like another
And
world.
most people, well, I think most people, they've told us that, and then most people who live, not who live, but most people who are in St. Charles County now, if you talk to them, like, where are you guys from? Oh, we're from
Mhm.
Florissant, we're from
Right?
Hazelwood, anywhere where. So pretty much this part of St. Louis where DePaul is at is kind of like on the edge of North County and Mid County. It's kind of a really interesting spot. And North County is an area that traditionally used to be white in the 60s and 70s. Has transitioned probably since the 80s into a more predominantly black area because a lot of North City and St. Louis,
Yes.
a lot of the black population has migrated out of the city and moved north into the north suburbs. And then the white people, they relocated to St. Charles County, which is why we have the population boom. And now people all the way out to Wentzville and everywhere else. And then fast forward to where Kayla works, where she was working at DePaul Hospital, which is right on the cusp of North County and Mid County. So, and also right up the street from St. Charles County. So it's in a
Yes.
weird spot where you get, because a lot of
It's
crazy
like a
things happen in St.
melting pot.
Charles. Yeah, a
Yes.
lot of great things happen in St. Charles. A lot of crazy things happen definitely around some parts of certain parts, not all parts, but even that part of Bridgeton is actually okay. It's a nice area, decent for the most part.
But
But
a lot of drug activity. I mean, a lot of just a lot of shootings, a lot of
St.
stuff.
Anne, meth,
Yes,
and yes, a lot of
meth.
that type of
Oh
stuff.
gosh,
Yeah,
and heroin's
yeah.
terrible.
So I just want to
And
give y'all context to that, so y'all would understand what she's saying. Like, it's kind of a weird area. That's why it's. So I'm assuming you were getting all sorts of very interesting situations. I'm guessing, right?
yes, and we were also one of the only places that was we could handle traumas, like level one traumas. We could
Yeah.
stabilize and ship out if we needed to. So us being, so close to the bridge, pretty much, we're right off 270. So we're at a
Yep.
central location for pretty much any good emergency.
Mm-hmm.
We just got a lot of good traumas. We got a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't know how to explain other than stuff, just because it sounds bad when I talk about describing like people being hurt as exciting, but it's like
You got to do your job.
yeah, my job is just exciting. Like, I mean, people don't always have to be hurt. Like, I've, helped bring babies into the world. I've, helped old people, just get a drink of water. Sometimes they call 911 because they want you to make a sandwich. I mean, you can help people in a lot of different ways, but I just liked how every day it was different. I walked into work never getting the same thing twice. Maybe some same people every day, like we call them frequent flyers in the
Right.
ER. But
Right.
that was really the only consistent thing I had was my coworkers and maybe a frequent flyer every once in a while. Other than that, everything's different. And it was just
Yeah.
my favorite. Like it's an adrenaline rush that you can't describe,
Was it did you get the adrenaline rush just from the act of doing the actual work, or was it also from a mix of just like helping people? Was it a mix of just, or was it just kind of like a combination of a little bit of everything?
Yeah, it's like the excitement of helping people because it's like, holy crap, like I know what's wrong with that person and I know how to fix it and I know that all these other people around me can fix this person too, and if we fix them, they could live, or
Yep.
we could make them feel better, or we could prescribe them medication to make them feel better. Just something as simple as, just from putting on a band-aid to a leg to assisting
Hmm.
in a cardiac arrest is that we I just it was interesting that I not interesting, I guess, but I just was surprised at myself that I knew so much knowledge to help all these people. So that's why I was excited too, because it's just a new thing, and you learn something new every day.
Yeah. Even as you sit there and hear you, even as I'm sitting here listening to you talk about it again, you still feel the energy and the lightness that it brings to you and the
Yes.
work. That's how I almost know is like something that you seem to be designed for, which leads me to this next point of the actual incident that ended up kind of changing your life and the trajectory of your career and so many other important aspects of where you were going at that time.
Yeah.
And I, again, I want to make sure I'm very sensitive to this subject before we dive into this piece. That if anybody's sensitive to any sort of like violence or anything like that, again, just a heads up that the story does have elements of that. But I want to fast forward to the aspect of your story to the day that this incident. So again, obviously, as you're where you guys are located at, you're up the street from the airport. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, everything's around us. So you guys are getting a mix of, and I don't think there's any other major trauma hospital, I think, in that area other than, I think, maybe Christian Northeast, and I think they closed down forever
Christian,
ago.
yeah, there's Christian, but Christian's a lower level hospital. So like in this so like you have level 1, which is trauma center, like that's the Mercy, Barnes, SLU. So that just means that anytime if you walk into a level 1 hospital at any time, you can be treated for any type of injury at any time. That means I don't have to call anybody. Like if you come in and your leg's off, they have the proper team to help you immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a level 2, they have to call people in. So you might walk in with an issue that we can't solve at that moment, but in 30 minutes to, we don't want to be 30 minutes, but in 30 minutes we can get somebody there to stabilize the patient. That's why we're a level 2. And then
Mm-hmm.
level 3 is a Band-Aid station that you just kind of treat in street. So somebody can come in with a cold, somebody can come in with, a broken arm, and they will
Mm-hmm.
cast them, something simple like that. I shouldn't say simple, but something that isn't life threatening can go to
Got
a
you.
level 3 and be treated with no problem. Um, so for us being a level 2, we were the closest level 2 in, I guess, our county, because you have to cross the bridge and we're it. I mean, you have us, and then you have, I think it's a 7-minute drive between DePaul and Mercy, which if you have a critical patient is 7 minutes between life and death, essentially.
Yeah, literally.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so that makes hmm. So you have so you're dealing with these different type of situations. So tell me about what happens the day of that you get to this day. You start off from you get up, go to work like any
Yeah,
other day. Like I'm getting up, going, getting ready for work,
which
get y'all butts in the car so we can drop y'all off so I can go do what I like. It start off like from that piece and kind of walk into, because again, I don't think people also realize, again, this is just like a normal day for you.
it
And the
was.
crazy part is I don't think we all realize this can happen to any last one of us, whether it's in your field or, but again, the probability of happening in your work is um at next level. So
Mm-hmm.
walk me through again that day when you started and kind of go from there.
It was July 11th of 2022. Started just like any other day. I think it was a Monday. And I don't know if I had my kids that morning. I don't know if they were with my mom, but I just remember I had just got my new car. So I was like super stoked to drive it to work. I think this was the only time I drove it to work, because I think that was I think that I bought it the week
Mm,
before, drove to work, and then was hurt. So I think that was my only time of driving it. So I was super stoked to drive my new van and pull into work at 9 o'clock, just roll in, normal day, chatting with everybody. And the incident happened around 11. And I don't know what happened between 9 and 11, but I was in our triage area, which is the area that everybody walks into off the street, or if you
yeah.
bring in a person through. So if you call 911 and you are coming in by ambulance, but you don't have an emergency, we will send you to the waiting room,
Mm-hmm.
because we have to save the ER for emergencies. So if you call for, your toe hurts, your arm hurts, your eye hurts, something non-emergent, we just take you to the waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that we are set up in triage is you walk in, and it's if you look to your left, there's a big open waiting room that's like in an L shape. So if you look straight ahead, that's like the head of the L, and it goes into the ER doors. And then to the right is a security office as soon as you walk in. But our triage desk is set up like a horseshoe.
Mm-hmm.
And Tammy was sitting with her facing on the, I guess, would it be the side of the horseshoe, facing the front doors, as well as my coworker Courtney. So they were able to see
Mm-hmm.
everybody coming in. And this woman came in by EMS. She came in for, I think, unrelated arm pain or abdomen pain, something trivial. So she didn't really have an emergency. So she came in by ambulance. She came into the front doors, and the paramedics were standing at our desk giving Tammy a report. So what that is whenever you bring in a patient to the ER, the paramedics will do a report where they tell you about the patient. They tell you why they're bringing them in. Just a little blurb about who they are, why they're
Yeah.
there. So that was happening with Tammy's talking to them, and the patient, the person that they brought in, she asked Courtney, "Where's the bathroom?" And Courtney said, "Oh, it's right over there." Ooh, sorry, that glare is terrible.
No, you good.
And pointed to her left. So she
Mm-hmm.
proceeds. to, I guess what would be her right, towards, you can see the doors of the bathroom from where she's standing. So I am on the back end of the horseshoe. She would be to my right, and the bathrooms are to my right. So she is making a line to the bathroom, is what I can see. And then all of a sudden, this woman is crossing in front of me, and she's going through the horseshoe towards Tammy and Courtney behind me. So I'm following her with my eyes, not understanding what's happening. All I'm
Because
knowing is
she's
that
pretty much
she's,
walked behind the counter at this point,
yes,
basically.
yes. It
Okay.
was just as if she had come behind the counter, like at a gas station. So
Mm-hmm.
she's coming behind my counter, and she's asking and pointing to Tammy, and she's saying, "Is this her? Is that her?" And I'm like, "What?" And I don't know what's happening at this point. All I see is her hands hitting Tammy in the head and in the neck. And so I turn around and I see her attacking Tammy. I get up and I run at this woman, not knowing what's going on. And as soon as I am close enough to see her to where I have my hands up to take her down, I see her hand, and she has a knife. And it was a butcher knife, like a kitchen block butcher knife. And in my head, literally, I thought, holy shit, she has a knife. I have hands. I don't know what I'm going to do. So, in that exact, this was all a period of probably like 2 seconds, but it felt like forever. I had my hands up. I felt a hit to the back of my head right here. And I went down. I struck the wall, and I think I passed out for just a quick second whenever she hit me, and that's why I fell. Otherwise, I don't think I would have lost, or the sheer force of her hitting me took me down. But when I got hit in the back of the head, I didn't understand that I had been stabbed. I did not know that's what happened. And so I hit the ground, and I was lying face down on the ground, pretty spread out, and was like, oh God, she's got a knife. She's going to kill me. And so I put my hands over my head and my neck to protect my head and my neck, like a tornado drill, pretty much. And I felt her stab me in the back and remove the knife completely, as if she was drawing back to do it again. And this 85-year-old man who is sitting in the chair next to Tammy getting triaged tackled her and took her off of me. And my coworkers helped subdue her. And then security came. So this attack happened in 11 seconds, and security was there in 13. So they were 2 seconds behind the attack. And I just remember turning around, or really rolling over. And that's when I understood I had been stabbed, because I saw the blood, and I felt my head and my neck being really warm. And my coworker had his hand out, and he was like, "Here, let me help you up." And he helped me up, and I was like, holy shit, I was stabbed. And he had the knife in his hand because he had subdued it from her, and he was like holding it away from me, like trying not to scare me. And he's like, "I got it, go." And then before I knew it, coworkers were putting me in a wheelchair and wheeling me back to the trauma room. And then I had put my hand in my head, and I was like, holy shit, she stabbed me. And I started hysterically crying. At that point, I had started understanding what was happening, as they're wheeling me back into the trauma room. So we go down this hallway. As we're rolling down the hallway, by the way, I'm seeing a trail of blood from Tammy, because Tammy had held her wound together. So Tammy was stabbed in her head and in her neck, and she had held it together and ran to the trauma room. So she is beyond amazing. But when I got in the trauma room, I saw they were assisting with Tammy, which a phenomenal team of people helped her. And I can't thank them enough for everything they've done for her. Just from my own personal thanks, because they went above and beyond. But when they got me in there, it's wild, because I've never been on that side of a trauma before. So immediately I was like, I'm a trauma patient. And knowing what is happening to your body in real time is also kind of scary, because I understood that I was stabbed in my head. I understood that I was stabbed in my back. I started having trouble breathing. So immediately I told one of the doctors, I was like, I'm having trouble breathing. I'm pretty sure she punctured my lung. And they took the x-ray, and they were like, yeah, but it's going to be fine. Like, I had a hemopneumo, which means I just had a collection of blood that was pushing on my lung. So, and I had pericarditis, which means that I had blood around my heart. I don't know, is that the right word? That's pericarditis. If not, it's fine. It'll be
Yeah.
fine. But um,
Jeez.
so I had the wound in my back was the worst one. The wound to my head, I don't know how, but she hit me back here, and I don't know if she just glanced off or if she wasn't. I don't know how. It did not. It. I don't know how. I'm still here because I mean, if she would have went lower, it would have hit me in my neck. If she, I just don't know how I got lucky with that one. But and
It wasn't your time,
no,
clearly.
no, and before I knew it, my phone was ringing off the hook. Everybody's calling me because they're like, "Hey, something happened at DePaul. Let's call Kayla to see what's going on." And before that, my one of my coworkers had called my husband, which was the scariest call he's ever gotten in his life because all they
Absolutely.
said was, "Hey, Kayla's stable, but we need you to get here." And he's like, "What do you mean she's stable? She's not a patient." And they're like, "There was an accident. She's stable, but we need you to get here." So that's all he knew upon,
Wow.
yeah, driving to the
And you guys are a
hospital.
good, what, 30 minutes outside of the hospital, away from the hospital. So I know that
Yeah,
drive was,
and I think he was working
ugh.
like Eureka that day too, so he was even
Oh,
farther. But he's like,
yeah.
yeah, it was very a thing I never thought I would experience in my life. Put it that way.
Kayla, like, listen, even as you're saying, even though I've read the story, I know what happened. Like, I messaged you afterward. Like, again, it's still hearing it in real time. Even if you said, I'm like, again, my face is scrunched up. I'm
Yes,
like,
I felt
I
bad. He kept
just,
talking because I was like, "Ooh, ooh, I'm sorry."
I just, one, I want to say, I'm so sorry that you ever had to encounter and experience, even go through something like that, because that is, we don't really talk about near death experiences a lot. And you
No.
being somebody who worked as a paramedic, you experience and see these things all of the time. So again, I think even as you talk about the knowledge and the information that you had that you were able to garner and gain as just being a paramedic,
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine how terrifying it would be to actually think like, okay, they stabbed me here. Did they hit an artery? Did they hit a certain vein that I know could take me out if they don't do it right
Yes.
now? Or even again, and so it's weird. It's like it worked in your guys' favor, but it also made it even more of a terrifying experience because on one end, it gives you the ability, like Tammy, she was new to hold the wound together, get to
Yes.
where you need to go. You knew where to go. Same thing with you. You knew, understood how to protect yourself. Put
Mm-hmm.
your hand right here, like. So it's weird. So it's like it's because it's almost as you're describing. It's almost like it was so quick, but it happened in slow motion.
Yes, it was. And whenever they told me that the attack happened in 11 seconds, I was like, there is. And the reason why we know that is because there's video footage of that,
Yeah,
which I have not, I don't want to witness it. I witnessed it firsthand. I don't need to see it. But
right.
that was the only reason why I knew it was that fast because otherwise I would have told you that was like a 5 or 10 minute attack because that's how
Hmm.
long it felt in my mind with just everything happening. And now, even talking about it, I still can't believe it was just so fast it happened that it literally changed everything.
And I'm assuming during this time too, because I noticed you didn't mention pain or a lot of that throughout the process until you again, obviously, until it started coming to realization, like, holy crap, I was stabbed. But I'm assuming your adrenaline is going so much because you're in survival mode that you're not even
Yeah.
feeling any of it. I mean, you know what happened as it's happening in real time, but I'm assuming your body's not registering the pain because again, I don't. A lot of people don't know that we go into literally fight or flight mode when our bodies are in that state, and essentially your body's trying to survive. So it will help you bypass those feelings, emotions, or physically what's happening in your body to get to the next moment. So was that kind of the case that was happening for you?
Yes, I wasn't feeling any pain. Like I said, I didn't know that I got stabbed. I didn't understand pretty much how badly I was hurt until I
Mm-hmm.
was wheeled back and sat down in the stretcher. And my coworkers were all around me, cutting my clothes off and like seeing the extent of just their faces and looking at me. I was like, oh, I look really bad. Like I'm
Yeah.
covered in blood. I got stabbed in my head. I have a
Yeah.
wound on my back. Like I was like, this is not normal for, this is not a normal everyday work injury. It's not like I slipped down some stairs. I was attacked. So it
Yeah.
was,
This is
and
this is more
it,
than workers' comp.
yes. Oh, workman's comp. What a joke.
Man, Kayla, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. And again, even as you're describing it, it's ridiculously painful to know that you had to encounter and go through the experience. And I think a part that I want to add to this is I personally know Tammy,
Mm-hmm.
to those of you who are listening. Tammy also was a nurse that was on staff with you on the same day, and Tammy is also the other nurse that went through who Kayla's mentioning. And I know Tammy through. Started taking music lessons from her husband way back years ago.
It's
After me, you
wild.
graduated high school. Like,
That's
so
so
again, we
wild.
went our ways, and I met Tammy because again, I want to start taking piano lessons. I don't know if I met her at the bank. I don't know because I used to work at a bank, and I don't know if she
Mm-hmm.
used to come in, but I somehow met her through some way, and they had a music studio, so I started taking piano lessons from them.
Wow.
And whenever I saw that news story, one, I was one completely blown away when I saw it was you,
Right?
but then two, when I saw it was also Tammy. Wait, what's happening?
You're like,
Like
how do
that
I know
was
both these people? Just like
it was
the cosmics that had to align for all of this is wild.
I mean, such a small world, and I've talked to Tammy since that incident as well. And again, she's in the whole process of going through litigation, so we'll get her story at another episode coming down the line. But I just hate that y'all had to go through that because I know she had some pretty extensive damage from what I've been able to
Yes.
see, and some very long lasting effects
Yes.
of that situation. And I guess I'm curious for you, what effects did you see right after this happened? So everyone, so you're going through this whole situation. Let's fast forward after this day of the day of the event. Obviously, they get you, stabilize you, you get your they get you together in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
What happens from there? As because I want to dive into the effects of how this ended up impacting you moving forward.
So immediately when we got discharged home, I remember I forget where Kevin had to go, but my husband Kevin had to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And normally I'm fine by myself. And this was, I think it was like a day or two. It wasn't quite, it might have been that weekend. I don't remember, but it was pretty quickly after the event. And he had left to go do something. And I remember just the fear I felt of being alone. And I had never felt that fear before. And
Yeah.
being terrified to be by myself at any given point. Um, and I remember that day, it was just so overwhelming that and I never worried about locking my door before. I've never worried
Yeah.
about my windows being closed. But that day, I remember I was like, I habitually locked all my windows, went around and locked my door. And it became a pattern to check my door every night when I came home. It became a pattern to check windows.
Yeah.
Um, I hated going anywhere by myself.
Mm-hmm.
For a while, I was not comfortable doing a lot by myself. I still don't like taking my kids places by myself, just sometimes, because if there's a lot of big crowds, I just worry that if something happens to me, what's going to happen to them.
Absolutely.
Which before, I mean, I could take them to the zoo and have no worries, but now I'm like, man, what if somebody gets mad at the zoo and a riot breaks out,
Yeah.
and then they have to
Yep.
and that's the thing that stunk the most is, and now that I'm past it, it's kind of weird to look back and remember those feelings, but just remembering how paralyzed I really was by just the fear of leaving and just being on my own again, because I was like, this happened to me at work, it can happen anywhere. And I just had a really recluse time for a little bit where I didn't want to leave my house for a long time. PTSD is something that I still struggle with a lot. Um, and that's another thing too. I don't think anybody knows exactly what PTSD is until you experience
Experience
it.
it.
And it's wild. And I never knew that. I guess before I had a therapist, I would never think that certain feelings can be traced back directly to PTSD, or like that it can, manifest in so many ways. Like I had depression before this with my dad passing, unfortunately, and I had anxiety before this, just, with daily life. But now it's like my depression has depression because I have a PTSD diagnosis, and now I might have a depressive episode that's related to PTSD rather than my other depression diagnosis. And it really changed it really changed everything, because for, like I said, I just became a shell of who I was for a good while. And still am just trying to, even working now, I don't like really doing a whole lot of things after work. I would much rather come immediately home because I feel really safe at home. So if people ask me to go do things, I'm like, I don't know. And it's not because I don't want to, it's just because my anxiety makes me feel like I'm not safe if I'm not home too much, or if I'm not at home enough. If that, it doesn't make any sense, but it does to my PTSD and my
No, it
anxiety.
No, Kayla, it makes 1,002% sense.
Mm-hmm.
It makes total sense because again, what a lot of people don't understand about PTSD is, and a lot of what I don't think a lot of people understand about trauma is, though our minds may understand what happened, though we may logically be able to analyze and put everything kind of in a succinct place and be like, oh, here's kind of how chronologically happened. Your body doesn't forget the trauma, and I think a
No,
lot of people are not willing to really talk about that or don't understand that often. That I think there's even like a book where the body keeps score. I think it's a
I
book,
started
something
reading
like
that
that.
book. It's actually fantastic.
It is.
It's a
It's an
great
amazing
book.
book because again, like as I've been in therapy for 8 years myself, so
Mm-hmm.
I've been learning that a lot of my trauma, which I thought was all logical in my brain, was sitting in my body, trapped. The
Right?
anxiety, the depression, what you're talking about, and not realizing like where is this? Like what's happening now? Don't
Yes.
get me wrong. Life is life, but I realized too that it's the body remembered a lot of that trauma, a lot of things that happened in a lot of places. And I think for you, obviously going through something like that, where you literally are traumatized physically, and because all you've described thus far has been the mental anguish and the mental effects of what it's caused, let
Yes.
alone the physical aspects of what happened afterwards.
Yes. And the mental thing for me was just as big as like me taking care of for my physical aspect, because and I remember whenever the workman's comp people gave me a PTSD therapist. I remember the first day I saw Mark Tobin's card. I'll give him a shout out because he's a great man. I remember the first time I saw his card, I thought immediately I was going to walk into a room with a stiff man in like a suit,
Yeah.
and he was going to be like, oh well, you got stabbed, you're going to have PTSD, and that was going to be it. And instead I walked into this wonderful office with like crystals and butterflies and this really
Mm-hmm.
sweet old man named Mark Tobin, who has just been amazing. And I am so thankful to him, only because he has really helped me understand like PTSD and what it is and how to get through it. And if it wasn't for him, I don't think I would have gotten through it, because I wouldn't have understood what I was going through, because it
Mm-hmm.
felt so much like I was just having constant anxiety or constant just anxiety attacks. And I was like, well, I can explain why I'm having anxiety attacks, because I was stabbed, but I couldn't understand why they would just happen out of nowhere, or just I would get sad all of a sudden just because I wasn't, doing what I usually did, which is another thing that still happens. Like, that's another thing too, is if something happens that dramatically alters a path, you still miss what path that you did have. Even if that path wasn't great, you still want that path back, because that was the path that you knew. That's your normal.
Familiar. And
And
a
I
lot of
had
people
my
don't talk about the grief that comes along with that.
yes. And I
Yes.
had no idea there was going to be grief either. And that was another thing, was that I didn't understand that, like, because I did work at DePaul for 10 years. I mean, I had a
Yeah.
career there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when that ended so abruptly, I didn't understand that I was going to have a grieving process for my job ending, for my paramedic like job ending, because it's something that I did care about. It's something that I did love. It's something that I did want to do every day, despite how much I might have hated statistics and crap about DePaul. I still love doing my job every day. Like, I always
Yeah.
wanted to work there. I had no plans to ever leave SSM. Like, I had plans to go to school to become a nurse, to continue my, broaden
Trajectory.
my horizons. And
Yeah.
for that to be immediately was just wild. Like, and I didn't understand that immediately either. It took me, so after I was hurt, I figured, SSM being SSM, they would work with me, because
Yep.
they want to help you. That's their whole thing. Is it? And that's the thing too. If you don't know the mission statement, like you said, you worked there. If you didn't know the mission statement, through our exceptional healthcare practices, we are through our exceptional healthcare services, we reveal the healing presence of
So
God.
God. Yep.
If you didn't know that, you could get fired. Like,
And for context, yeah, I worked for SSM Healthcare for the corporate office for a year. I think the same time you were actually working. I don't think we even knew we were working at the same time,
right?
but I worked in corporate office, and you worked for one of the, again, for one of the facilities, and again, that was the first thing you saw when you walked into the office. It
Yes.
was the first thing that you had to know, and again, they required all of us to know it. That was
And it's the
actually a
first
part
thing
of,
you see
again,
when you walk into our hospitals.
because it was part of our mission, and SSM is a Sisters, I think it's Sisters of Saint Mary,
This
right, or
is
something
St.
like that.
Mary's. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a Catholic organization, healthcare organization that has hospitals all over in Oklahoma, but mainly in the Midwest.
Yeah. And they were built off the backs of nurses, of nuns,
Yes,
not nurses,
of
nuns.
nuns.
who
Exactly.
who wanted to do the right thing and just help people, and now it's just a
Yes.
corporation of greed.
And it was really kind of going through that switch when I was there. Again, because there was several things that were kind of happening, kind of going on during that time, and I was so glad that was actually my last job before I moved to California. And I was glad to get out of there because I
I'm
hated it.
sure.
And again, because I was my job wasn't exciting. I was dealing with insurance companies and all those other things, but again, I remember that being a very much huge part of the ethos and how we wanted to move as an organization.
Yes.
So I think it ended up really feeling, again, let alone, and before we even dive into that piece, like physically, did you have any long-term effects after that? Because obviously
Oh,
we talked about the mental and how that impacted you. How did you physically recover from this whole piece?
so physically I'm okay, like completely recovered. I just have pain, which is another thing that happens is people don't talk about, like, um not, I shouldn't say phantom pain, but if you have chronic pain that
Yeah.
kind of is chronic but not chronic all the time,
Hmm.
that's a whole nother beast. But it's so I have pain where I was stabbed in my back and my head. So I'm wearing my hair up right now. I'll have to take it down in a little bit because my head will just pound. That was never
Mm.
a problem before I had my stabbing. Um, but my back is very sensitive sometimes. Like I can't
Hmm.
wear T-back. I couldn't wear like bras for a while because even just the touching of the strap to my back would hurt. And still to this, I mean, till this day, you can push on that spot where I was stabbed, and I will feel pain, and it will radiate other places. Um, and but the SSM doctor saw me and said that, he goes, "How old are you?" I said, I'll be 35 this year. He goes, "Well, you might not have pain in your 50s." And I said, "Oh, okay, great, thanks, thanks."
And let's talk about even the grief that comes along with, again, this one incident not being a one-time incident. It's something that literally radiates, just like that pain. It radiates to
Yes.
several other areas of your life. Not only because, again, as I'm listening to you again, you're still just talking about, again, the mental and the physical impact would impact you. But again, you have a husband,
Mm-hmm.
you have children. You're also still grieving for your dad. That again, that was only a few years before. It's not like it was
Yeah.
such a huge time before, from what I remember.
Yes.
Um, like so that all this being combined, and then now you're having to navigate. Because I remember you used to post a lot about your job, your career, and things like that on
Yes.
Facebook, things like that. So now you're navigating almost like literally this emotional, physical, like perfect hurricane all at once.
Mm-hmm.
So one, I just want to say I'm grateful that I'm looking at you right now.
Thank you.
No, like seriously, because again, so many people don't make it through periods like this and give completely up. And the fact that I'm sitting there looking at you, and the fact that we're actually having this conversation, Kayla, I know there was a lot of shame. I know there's a lot of things that happened for you throughout this process. It's like, again, all of the things, and even you, probably even as I'm hearing you talk again, I even hear like elements. It's almost like elements of shame, even around you struggling with some of the things you did. But it makes sense because of what you went through. So I just want to say, listen, you are a strong one. Not be, and again, I hate even like, oh, you're so strong. Like sometimes it's not a badge of honor. We don't want to always be
No.
strong, but
Yes. But I get.
I
Thank
just
you.
commend you seriously because I know this is not easy at all.
Thank you. I appreciate
Mm-hmm.
it. And it definitely is never something that I thought would happen in my life, and never a place I thought I would be. Like after my dad passed, that was another thing too, is COVID hit, or sorry,
Yeah.
my dad passed, and then my aunt actually passed right after my dad, like a couple months,
Mm.
I think 6 months after. And then my grandma passed, and then COVID happened, and then my aunt passed. So I had a lot of death, and then just and then
Oh.
just COVID, and it was
And then working
COVID.
as a healthcare person in COVID,
Oh
how was
God,
that? Was that even more of a?
terrible. It was. And it was just because nobody. I mean, it was a pandemic, and nobody knew what to do. I mean, I shouldn't say nobody knew what to do, but I mean, honestly, that's kind of what it was in the beginning. Whenever COVID first hit, we were so blindsided by how fast and quick and deadly it was, that it really kind of became like, oh shit, like if
Yeah.
you get this, you can die. And it's not like if, it's when now, because we work in healthcare. And I remember just the fear of, I used to come home and we would get, uh, in the beginning, they wouldn't give us scrubs. So in the beginning, we would just go to work in our normal scrubs and then
Hmm.
come home, and I would strip off in my garage immediately. throw my clothes in the washer and then sprint upstairs to take a shower before I would touch or hug anybody in my house because I was terrified of giving them COVID.
Yeah.
And just that fear of I could potentially bring a deadly disease home that can kill my family. Because in the beginning, that's what you're thinking it is. You're not understanding in the beginning, we weren't understanding how it was spreading so fast. We weren't understanding the pathology. We weren't understanding just really anything about this disease, this not really disease, but this sickness, this virus. So in the beginning, we were, uh, if you are on oxygen and if you have COPD, if you are somebody that requires like oxygen full time,
Mm-hmm.
um, if we knock you out and put you on an intubation, like we put an ET tube, intubation tube down your throat, and we make a machine breathe for you. Sometimes, if you are somebody who's been living on oxygen for a while or somebody who is constantly on low oxygen, um, when we put that tube down your throat and kick you onto a machine to breathe for you, you might not come off that machine
Mm.
because that machine is breathing for your body, and your body's like, well, hell, this machine's doing it better than I ever
I'm
could, so
good.
I'm just not going to breathe anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unfortunate because in the beginning of COVID, we were people would come in with nasal cannula, which is normal. You see it in movies, just the little cannula that goes up your nose, nothing big. But when COVID hit, if you came in with anything higher than a nasal cannula, you were getting a tube down your throat. And so
Mm.
we were tubing so many people. And
So was the tubing part of the thing that was killing people off?
in the beginning, that was a thing that was happening, was like we weren't sure if, because we would have like, a 92-year-old Mima that would come in for a cough, but because she has a cough and it's COVID time and her O2 saturation is 90,
Yeah.
we have to
Yeah.
make a decision. Does 92-year-old Mima need to go on a vent? Does she need to stay off a vent to prevent, like, to help somebody else that needs a vent? Does Mima even need a vent because she's 92 years old and she's lived her time? It was just something like that where people were having to make decisions on the fly like that, where it was,
Ah.
and just seeing, so it was just so much death at first because we were trying to understand how to help people with the virus. I mean, I just
Did it
remember in
become
the
like a
beginning.
blanket treatment almost? Like
Yes.
because it almost seems like it's because again, obviously, I'm gonna say if you bring in somebody with COPD or bronchitis, or they're showing again certain cells are showing up, and you don't know what you're trying to diagnose. I'm assuming during that time again because it is calamity, and because again we don't know what's COVID, what's not. So they're just giving a blanket treatment. We just treating everybody the same way because, and unfortunately, this obviously impacted a lot. So my grandmother also died of COVID during that time and ended up being intubated and went through that whole period. And so that's why I'm like, man. That's why. But I obviously, I guess, what else would people expect it to do again? Because
Yeah.
we found out at work, like, hey, take your laptop. My boss was like, take your laptop home on a Friday. She's like, you guys, we may not be coming in on Monday, but we'll probably be back in a week. We didn't go back for it.
Right?
Like I don't know how long it was,
The
like
world just shut
for a year.
down.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was the thing
So
too, was that the world shut down. Nobody else is
yeah,
working, but yet I still had to go to work. My life is still kicking like it normally did too. And that was something in the pandemic that I was thankful for because I was like, I still have a job. I'm still working. I'm still helping people. Like I was not excited to work during a pandemic, but I was still excited I could be useful.
but were you able to process anything throughout this time though? Because I guess
No.
because again, you described a series of losses that you had. Now you're in the middle of a pandemic, and again, even as you described your first experience when you first saw them, again, in the type of paramedic job, it's the type of job where I need to just do it. I can't think too much. I need to just get it done and do. So I
Yep.
feel like this is a job that you can easily go into survival mode or disassociate and just kind of
Yes.
function along. Is
Oh
that what you were
gosh.
kind of in by this point?
Yes, disassociation was my middle name. Like, I would
Same.
just
Yeah, I get it.
get to work my day, and I would be. It was so easy too, because once you get to work, you can just flip a switch, and you're like, I'm working. I don't need to think about anything else. I just gotta save
Yep.
people, and I'm done. And it was just easy to pull myself out of like. That was nothing too, is I wasn't healing from my dad's passing because I was having to work, and
Yeah.
because he died in 2019, and then boom,
Hmm.
2020 is when COVID happened. So yeah, I wasn't processing really any kind of emotions.
And then your sons are still young during this time too, because you have two young boys, right? So I know
Yeah,
they
they
were
were
still.
two. Oh, how old? Yeah, Lucas. I had just had him in 2017, and Easton
Mhm.
was in 2015. So he was 4, and Lucas was 2. Yeah.
So again, the things that you were managing and having to wade through at this point in time, where again, it's almost like all this stuff culminated, and then this event happens with this deranged patient, and it's almost like it was like the thing that tipped it all over, and your life unravels completely after that.
Literally, it was
Yeah.
and like what I was still going to school too. Like I was still going to school during
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic. I was still trying to get my nursing license up until the day I was hurt. So like I was,
Mm.
I was still planning everything, and then boom, cut, done. And then all of a sudden I had to deal with all these emotions that I had pushed down a lot. And that was another thing too, was that when I started dealing with all of my PTSD emotions, it brought back the grief of my dad, it brought back the grief of COVID, it brought back the grief of a lot of things. And then I had to just kind of re-heal from everything as time went on. And it was hard. I was very, very, very angry. I was very angry. I was a
Let's
very
talk
angry
about it.
person for a while because
Let's be real.
yeah, I was very angry. I would snap at everybody because I was like, how dare my life be changed in a minute and it affect nobody else but me? Um,
How did Kevin
and
reply to that? Respond to that?
he got very well. Kevin is wonderful in the fact that he has also experienced PTSD, so he has
Yeah.
also understands, and he just it led to in the beginning because I was not able. That's another thing too is it's you don't really learn how to get over it. You just learn how to deal with it, go
Deal with
through
it
it.
and live with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in the beginning when I wasn't really getting through it and I was just yelling and being angry all the time, it did cause a lot of fights, did cause a lot of tension. It did cause a lot of rifts because I mean, he's my person and I'm just coming home and taking it out on him, but he was the only person that I could take it out on
Of
besides my
course. Yeah.
children unfortunately, which I didn't want to take it out on them too. And so it was just hard navigating that PTSD like not transition, PTSD journey, I guess, because I had to go through the stages of grief of losing a job, the stages of
Yep.
grief for kind of like losing my career and my goal path, and then dealing with the PTSD of the attack as well. Um,
Mm.
but uh, so yeah, in the beginning, a lot of fighting. It was ugly. It was brutal. And I think my therapist said like 20% of people just give up
Yeah.
during their cases. Like they just give up on their workman's comp cases. They give up on everything because they're just over it and they just want to move on with their lives and don't even like process anything. And I was like, holy crap, I can't even imagine because I knew the second I dropped it, it was going to come back up later. And
Yeah.
I couldn't, I couldn't not take care of it now. So I was very thankful in that I had Mark to help me. And then Kevin also would be sometimes I'd be, complaining or I'd be nagging or I'd be doing something or I'd be just feeling myself getting angry. And he'd be like, have you talked to Mark about how you're feeling? He's like,
Yep.
maybe you should call Mark. Or I would be crying and he's like, have you, as and it was one of the things too where, Mark started asking me, he's like, are your feelings because you got stabbed? He's like, then you can link it
Mm.
directly to your PTSD. He's like, if those feelings are not because you got stabbed, then it's just your typical everyday anxiety depression.
Being a human being. Yeah.
Yes. And I had learned that like when I started kind of ticking that box, I was like, wow, most of my stuff does come from being stabbed that day specifically because it did alter my path, because it did throw me into a loop. And so it was once I started to put the pieces in the right places and just have I just really I don't know, I just had a good support system and nobody gave up on me and everybody just kept
Yeah.
working with me, and that was just the best thing I could have asked for because it's hard.
And yeah, it really is hard. And I think a piece that people often don't really mention, even as you're talking about healing, is I think a part that makes healing hard. And even as I'm sitting there listening to you, and that I think about even as I relate to my own story and just so many people I've talked to, is with healing, I don't think we mean to, but we add a layer of expectation to it. That healing will look a certain way. That healing won't
Yes.
be reactive. That healing won't you won't get triggered by certain things. I talked to a therapist and my life moved on, and it literally does not work like
Yes.
that. Grief does not. Death. My grandmother died 8 years ago, and there's still some moments where I'm talking about something, the most random thing. I'm watching TV. I still can't listen to Coco, the movie Coco, and hear that song, who's
Oh
singing
my
to
god,
grandma, and
no. I
without tearing
sobbed.
up. Like every
Instantly
time,
sobbed.
like
It's
seriously,
like
like made me tear up, like almost like right now, like again.
yeah.
But there's, and I don't think people realize that because again, I think we've been taught, and I think especially in our society, in Western society, we've been taught that healing and that life and that careers and that everything is this linear journey. Here you
Yes.
do this, then it does this, and then it turns into this. But we as millennials have found out that that's not how life works at all.
No. And that
At
was another
all.
thing that I was like so angry about too was I was like like I had this in my head. I was like, how come like my dad, my grandpa, they could go work for companies for 50 years and get
Yep.
like, reimbursed, have the, get have, life insurance or what I shouldn't say life
Yeah.
insurance, but just be taken care of by their company. And like
Mm-hmm.
nowadays that's non-existent anymore. Like you are not part of a company, you're just a number that is working in a machine. And it is,
And especially since the pandemic, it has
yes.
gotten, because I got laid off, and since then, one experiencing that experience, and then seeing just how companies have changed and how they move now, has been incredible. I'm talking about, it's almost like they're punishing us for COVID, because during COVID, a lot of people working from home and kind of got a little bit of rights, and it's also now that it's flipped, it's went to the other extreme. But I don't think people actually realize how bad it's went to the other extreme.
Oh, it has.
Like,
It
like
has.
it is next level, and people don't realize. I again, even trying to navigate the market. That's why I'm like, I'm not even navigating. I give up. I'm gonna just keep doing my business
Mhm.
and keep building my own thing, because it is. There's been a shift, which also leads me into the point of with how SSM responded to you after this situation, which has been, again, I got a glimpse of it when I spoke with the Tammy, but I'm curious on how did they end up navigating that situation for you, because again, we get lost in the language and the idea of this. So it's a healthcare organization. They're mission driven and they care about this and they're a holistic approach. But
Yes,
when
they have
you
a mission statement about Jesus on their wall, so you think that
but
it's all going
forget
to be
it,
great.
because at the end of the day, what I'm really finding out is, again, if we ain't talking money, boo, and if it's not generating money for us and it's not generating something for our product or for our bottom line, we don't give a damn.
We don't want it.
We don't want it. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
to us. And I think what a lot of us didn't realize is, because we've been taught this, like, oh, if you, like you said, your dad stayed here, or my grandfather worked for Caterpillar for
Yes.
years, or my other grandfather worked for the city of Oakland for 30, 40 years. That's not a thing that happens these days, because
No.
the loyalty that companies would offer is not, it's just not there anymore. So I'm not offering you that same loyalty.
Right,
So
and
let's talk about,
there's no
yeah,
incentive anymore either to stay at a company because they're not like they don't they're not welcoming. They're not like, "Hey, you've been here for 10 years. Let's give you a raise. You've been here for 12 years. Like,
no,
you've shown dedication to the company. Let's
nope.
reward you." There's none of that anymore either, which there should be because dedicating your time to a company is important. I learned that essentially when I got stabbed and almost died at my job that you could die at your job and they will replace you for very quickly. But that doesn't make your job any less important because your job still needs to go on after you're there. But you should still be appreciated for the job that you've done because that is still the job that you did, if that makes sense.
It makes 100%. And I think that's why it leads me to, again, this blind loyalty that we've had to companies and organizations. And I think that's the
Yes.
really probably one of the deepest elephant stories of your story, specifically to me. The experience, you knew that that was obviously a possibility that could possibly happen, being
Mm-hmm.
working in the field you're working in. But I think it's more so, I think the part that has been shocking to me, and I think definitely I think for even you, has been how the company's actually responded.
Yes.
Because here you are saving people's lives literally every day, day in and day out. Here you are doing God's work literally. And then to come around and turn around, you ended up with almost not even a lick of protection at all, or any sort of. So really quick, because again, I don't want the episode to go too long. We just hit the hour mark. Yeah, I'm trying to be better about long of these conversations, but they be good. But really quick, I'm curious on for you, because I don't want to rush this because it's a really important piece. But like, what has been the aftermath as far as the process for you getting the support that you needed? Because you mentioned workers' comp a few times. You mentioned. Let's talk about that piece.
My coworkers, phenomenal. Like the people that I worked with at DePaul are, I always say this, is that DePaul can be a really crappy hospital, but the people that I worked with inside those walls are some of the
Mm-hmm.
best people I've ever met in my entire life, and some of the best doctors that I've ever worked with, some of the best nurses, some of
Mm-hmm.
the best paramedics, everybody that I've worked with. I just can't say enough about the staff there. And that is really what makes your job, is if you have a good set of people, especially what we do. If you don't have good people, you cannot rely on your teamwork, then your teamwork falls apart. And whenever we're saving lives, we need a good teamwork.
Yeah.
And no, the day after I was stabbed, these little old ladies walked into my room and I think they were the sisters of St. Mary's themselves. That's how old they were.
Mm-hmm.
And they just walked on in. They said, "Honey, can we do anything for you? Can we help you in any way?" And I said, "No, I don't want to speak with you because you're not who I want to talk to. I want to talk to my boss. I want to talk to the head people in charge now."
Because
And
y'all trying to be slick, trying to send Mary
yeah,
Magdalene in here. Quit
right.
playing with
They
me.
literally sent little
Yeah.
old people in there, and they're like, she won't yell
Right.
at them. And thank God my husband was sitting with me because I was so mad. I was shaking. And they came in, and I was like, I have told you guys. I was like, I have said this for 10 years. I was like, I worked here for 10 years. I've said it's only a matter of time till somebody gets hurt, till somebody gets stabbed, someone gets shot. I'm like, my blood has been spilt for this. Like, for what? For what?
Yeah.
For negligence, because you guys have been negligent on safety needs. Like, we have written, they would have like comment cards on how we could be better. And I mean, I would, if I had $1 for every time somebody put safety on there, I'd be a millionaire by now. We preached for safety. We asked for safety. We have, and like, I don't know if you got taught CPI while you worked there, but it's pretty much, did you get taught CPI?
CPI, no. What was it?
So
You said CPI.
it's
I think you said CPR. No, CPI, nah.
CPI is what they call, oh, what does it stand for? I forgot what CPI actually stands for, but it is essentially moves that you can use to take people down in the healthcare system, but you can't hurt people. So these are like non-invasive moves that won't hurt people. And
So
it
they're
was,
still trying to protect the company, so the company doesn't get liable of getting sued, even
mhm,
though it's still at your risk.
we were told that if somebody is putting their hands around your throat, that if you, so somehow, if you snake your hands through their arms and do this, you can magically move their hand from around your throat. And I was like,
And that's what they expect you all to do and to be able to do. And again, don't do anything outside of that, or now you'll be liable, or we could just let you go because now you've put the company at risk for it. Because again, the bottom line is money.
yeah, don't fight the patient. Don't hurt the patient. Don't hurt somebody that wants to hurt you, because if you hurt this person, we can get sued.
Now that makes sense at CVS when somebody's stealing something out of
Right?
there because it's all insurable replaceable. Baby, my life is not replaceable like
No.
that. So it's either you or them, and it's definitely going to be you, boo.
Yes.
I like when it comes to me and my life. So I like that's really wild.
Yes.
So
And
so that's
that was what was beat into our heads, was we needed to use CPI. We had to use CPI. We couldn't use any kind of outside forces to protect ourselves. So if someone's
mm,
swinging at you and you don't use CPI techniques, then you can possibly get fired because you didn't follow proper protocol, even though you're protecting yourself. And you can't condone what somebody will do in a fight or flight situation. You honestly can't, because you don't know until
it's
you are
not
put in a
predictable,
situation. That's why it's called fight or flight, because you literally don't know if
right?
you're gonna, it's fight, flight, or freeze. You could do any one of those things, and it's different depending on what situation. You could fight in some situations, you could flee in others. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
it's, there's different things. So that was one piece that was just wild. And then um coming off of being hurt, just me wanting to get checked up on. It was a, I had to go see my own private doctor before they would see me, and then it was still a year before they would see me. I mean, they pushed seeing me out for a long time. They quit paying me after 6 months of being off work, and they quit paying for my health insurance. And then promptly billed me after 7 months and said, "Hey, remember how we were paying your bills? Well, you need to pay us back now because you weren't working for us and we were paying your health care, but we want that back."
The cuss words that are sitting on the tip of my tongue right now, like, oh my, I can't even say what I want to say because I'm trying to really be what?
Yes, yeah. I got a letter saying that they were going to take me to court for money that I owed them for using my health insurance while I was off work, because they were like, "Oh, you aren't working, and if you're not working, we can't provide you with health insurance because, that's just losing money on the company." So literally they just were like, "Bye," and just kicked me out the door because and at the
So
6 month mark too. So I got hurt in July.
yeah.
They stopped paying me by that following July. Still had not talked to me. I had no idea what was going on. All I knew is that I was not going to get paid, and I was not under health insurance anymore. I hadn't been told about a job. I hadn't been told about my space at the company. I was just told that this is what's happening.
So was the whole
And
time were you working through so they're not telling you anything. So you
no,
don't really know. So this whole time you're just off
mhm,
and you're getting treated and healing, but they're not communicating next steps, what's happening, what's this
nope.
going to look like after this, nothing.
Yep. They're just, all they would do was call me and ask me, "Are you working?" And I would say, "Nope." And they would say, "Okay." And then they would hang up. And that was like in the beginning when they were trying to assess me for, I guess, workman's comp. But they would just call me and ask if I was working, and then that was honestly it. And then that following August, they called me up and said, "Hey, we have a job offer for you." I said, "Great." I said, "I don't want to go back in the hospital." They said, "No problem." They said, "You know
Mm-hmm.
St. Mary's?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "You know the Welcome Center that's right next door to it?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "We want you to work there for 6 months." And I said, "No." I said, "It's a hospital campus." I said, "I don't want to be on a hospital campus." I was like, "Can you send me to
And that's right
corporate?"
in the middle of the city.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And they were like, "Well, I mean, this was only temporary anyway, because in 6 months we were going to put you at St. Joe's Health Center." And I'm like, "So you're going to put me back in a hospital, even though I don't want to work in the hospital?" And she legit said, "Well, we're just working with your perimeters on what we can do for you." And I was like,
Like you're the disturbance.
right? Like I'm
Like
the
you went and stabbed
problem.
yourself. And I think that's one of the, again, Kayla, I think this is the piece that a lot of people don't realize as well, is HR is not really for you.
No,
It's for to protect the company. It's never been for you.
no.
And
And they
I
never
found
knew
that
that.
out. Yeah, but a lot of people did not realize that, and a lot of people don't know that. But like HR is not. It's there to protect the company from the liabilities, from the legal things, from all of. It's there to protect the organization. But
Yes.
we want to protect our bottom line. Not This is not about serving you or. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And I think that's also a swift awakening that I think hits a lot of people in the face, and it can be a very painful experience because again, we've been conditioned from a young age that your job is who you are, that
Yes.
what you do is who you are, that what you produce and what you perform and how you produce and how you perform is what your value and your worth is associated with. So when that's threatened and when these jobs just suddenly like it's not just like, oh, I lost a job. It literally feels like your life like ends in some weird ways.
Yes.
It's like a literal, almost like a death experience for a lot of people. Now, some people are like, I don't give a damn about my job. I don't care. But when you actually care about what you do, like for me, I cared about what to do. You really cared about what you do.
Yeah. Because if
It's
you expect to build a life with that company, and if you've built your life around your job essentially, because
mm-hmm.
you know that, like, because I mean, think about it, you need your job to pay bills, you need your job to do essentially everything, but
Yeah.
you and so you it's 9 to 5, you build your life around this work schedule, and you think this is going to be infinite, this is going to be what it's going to be for a while, until I choose not to. And so, you always think it's until I choose, never knowing that we're not in charge. Somebody else can be in charge, and they'll take it away from you just as quickly.
Well, I think that's the thing about life. Life is in charge. And that's the crazy part. I feel like that's what therapy has taught me, that life is kind of in charge and we have to figure out how to respond to it when it happens because we cannot control all these aspects of what happened. Like, obviously, you never had any plans for this to happen, for your life to roll out in this way, for this situation to literally change the trajectory of your,
My
not even just
life.
your career, but your actual little physical, mental, emotional well being of who Kayla is as a human being.
Yes.
And again, that's super, super, super impactful. That's why, again, I keep commending you for being able to share your story because, again, I know it's not easy. And
Thank
again, the
you.
fact that I'm sitting here talking to you, seriously,
I
is
mean, thank you for
huge,
having
Kayla.
me, and thank you for wanting to chat with me and tell my story. I mean, I have,
Yeah.
ever since I got hurt, I shouldn't say ever since, but I've always been wanting to make healthcare safer. I mean, even when I worked at DePaul, I was always yelling, not yelling, but saying we need safety, and I was the one that got hurt. And I still want to. That's the thing, is that at the end of this, I still want something to happen for like for healthcare, for someone,
Absolutely.
for safety to be prevalent everywhere. And the only thing that's happened so far is I think they put up plexiglass in the ER waiting rooms now. And I mean, it's a step. It's a step in the right direction. Is it completely safe? No. But is it more than what I had? Yeah. Would it have stopped a knife? I don't know. But it's interesting when your company is reactive as opposed to proactive.
And I'm realizing that a lot of companies and organizations move like that. They're
Mm-hmm.
again, we can say that whether it's been about the political stuff that's happened, whether it's about Black Lives Matter, everything is
Yes.
always,
Everything,
we're going to react to
anything
it rather
political, everything.
than
Yes.
be proactive. It's always this reaction. And the sad part is people like you get lost in that collateral damage of this reaction sometimes, because when you're reacting, again, just like in a life or death situation, you're dealing with a patient, baby, we're reacting to what's happening in this moment. We don't have time to always respond and think of. Give me this. Let me plug this up right now. He's bleeding out. I need a time. Like again, you have to. So I feel like again is what's happened to a lot of people, and I feel like again, like when I look at the statistics of, because I looked at some statistics again before when you talked, as I was just thinking about again, like because I've been following healthcare, and obviously I've worked in healthcare honestly for a good chunk of my career, where they here in California when I worked for a medical university where they
Oh,
were training
nice.
doctors, or when I worked for SSM for years out there in St. Louis. Even as I ran across this one statistic from the National Nurses United, it says that 81.6% of nurses this year have experienced workplace violence within the past year, with nearly half reporting an increase in such incidents on their units over the same period. And a
That's
lot of this data that I was able to
wild.
find is not even it doesn't even include, like for this one, like the rate of violent attacks against healthcare workers has grown significantly, with the 63% increase in injury rates from violent attacks from 2011 to 2018. So that's data before this even happened for you.
Yeah, and it shows
So
a steady increase of violence just among, I mean, healthcare especially, but I mean, after COVID hit too, you can see a violence kind of amongst people starting.
yes,
And that was a thing that happened after COVID too, was that a lot of people became very angry and very
yep,
violent after COVID. And it was just because you can't shut some people up in a house forever and expect nothing to happen. Or if people have no other support system at home except themselves and they're by themselves and they are left to
yep,
their own devices, that's what happens. And it's just wild. And I think that when my therapist and I were talking about it, because I was like, man, I want to go back to healthcare. I do. And my therapist was like, it's the statistics are 1 in 4 nurses get hurt.
mm-hmm.
And he's like, so if you're working on your unit with 3 other nurses, he goes, one of you could get hurt that night. And I was like, I'm not good with taking that chance anymore. It's
Yeah,
just, and I should, that's the thing, we shouldn't have to. As healthcare workers, you shouldn't have to walk into a job and worry about your safety, about you going home, about anything to do with your life. Because if I'm worried about my life, I'm not focused on saving your life.
your
And that should
life.
never be a thing that's a question. Because that's another thing I don't understand either, is that why would you not want a hospital to be the most secure place that it can be? We make children's hospitals so secure because they're children and we want to protect the children, but we are all just as precious as like all of us are just as
All
equally
of us.
precious as children. We're
Yep,
all somebody's children and we
yep.
all deserve the same kind of protection. Like it shouldn't be just a children's hospital gets that much because they're kids and because it's a higher chance of getting stolen. It should be every hospital gets treated this way.
Seriously. So I guess, and I agree with you, because again, we all are we all somebody's child.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And we all want to live to see another day until it's our time, or until we're tired of being here. Like, but
Yes.
like everybody wants a fair, equal chance of being here.
Mm-hmm.
Period. So I guess, and you're right. Even as I'm sitting there looking again, they have not really, even as Missouri, which don't get me started on Missouri, but even as I'm looking here, like, again, they've introduced something possibly called like the Save Act, which is like a
Yes.
form of some form of protection, but it still has nowhere near the amount of protections that individuals like you would need in order to feel safe to go back into the workforce, specifically in the field that you were doing. So I guess, as to round out this conversation, and a piece that I'm sure people are probably wondering about, and even for me now, fast forward since this time in July to now, July 2022, right?
Mm-hmm.
To, here we are now in June 2024. So we're about to come up on another
On two
anniversary of this
years.
incident. Yeah, two
Which is
years.
wild to me. I can't, it feels like it's been 2 years, and it also feels at the same time like it's been a lifetime ago.
It literally feels like I'm talking about just hearing talking. I'm like, it feels like this was 10 years ago, but it literally 2 years is not long. This trauma is like, hey, I'm still here.
So
Like,
fresh.
this is fresh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, this is hot and ready. Like, man, that's no joke. So I guess for you now, I know you're not working as a paramedic anymore in that same fashion. And obviously the trauma associated with just even being in that, I totally understand. How have you been able to readjust your life as far as still serving people, as far as still showing up as Kayla and trying to find your way back to Kayla? Or is there no thing of, I'm finding my way back to Kayla, this is the new Kayla, and I'm trying to figure out what this looks like?
I think that's the thing, is I'm trying to figure it out now because it's been so wild. Like the amount of transition I've had over the last, I mean, 2019 was how long ago? Like 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
6 years. Because once my dad passed, I remember talking to a therapist about that and being like, I was a different person before my dad passed as opposed to after my dad passed because of the grief cycle that you go through. And you just, it's just a whole nother ball game. And I remember
Yeah.
telling my therapist too, I'm like, I'm a different version of Kayla than I was before I was stabbed. I'm a different version now because it's, I'm just trying to navigate, I think, this piece of my life and trying to figure out, I have a 9 to 5 job now as a receptionist.
Yeah.
Um, I work at a infusion center, which is still helping people. We still help people with chronic issues, which is
Mm-hmm.
great. And I work with one of my friends that was at DePaul. So I still have Old Home with me, and we still. I mean, I still like what I do. It's just I am trying to adjust because I've never worked. I haven't worked a 9 to 5 job in 10 years. My previous schedule was I worked 3 12s a week and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I had multiple days off. I had, I could take time out for myself during the week. And now I'm trying to
Yep.
be like, um, 9 to 5, this is, this is for the birds. Like there ain't no time
Literally
to
for the birds.
take time out for yourself. There's no time to do anything. I feel like I'm just literally going to work and waking up and going to work. And so it's just, I guess, trying to figure out what I'm going to do now as opposed to before, where I was like, okay, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to do this. And now I'm like, well, what do I do? Like,
Well, because they give you this whole, you follow this checklist, but you realize the further you get in that checklist, like again, going to school, now I have $80,000 of student loan debt to
yep,
show for it. Now I have like, again, it's like you follow all those steps, but you realize quickly and swiftly, depending on what layer you are in within our society, you don't have protections for those things. So you can go do all those things,
yes,
but there isn't a guarantee on return and benefit anymore. And I think that's the part that's like, think of why so many people are struggling with depression and anxiety, especially people in our age where we followed all of the, I did it the way, and then you get to this point where it's like, and even for me, I'm like, that's why I struggle even with, I'm like, do I want to go back to 9 to 5? Do I want to keep just
yes,
struggling with my business? Even though I'm not making the money, I'm not doing what I was doing before, it's still like what you're describing is like, that's what I don't miss though. I feel like, again,
yeah,
like you lose parts of who you are. And again, somebody like you who gave the loyalty and the commitment to a company. And I'm not, and this isn't to say don't give that. Obviously, everybody has to
oh
do what they
yeah,
have to do to survive.
yes,
But it is also to say, and I think this highlights for you, Kayla, and for so many of us, how do we hold space for myself while also holding space for what I'm supposed to be doing, but holding it in a more balanced way. Now, there's no such thing
yes,
as it always being equal, but holding it in a more way that's not going to completely just rob you of your ability to be a human being. And then whenever, stuff like this happens, because you've been robbed of your human being, your humanity, they don't even see it to even respond
yes,
to your humanity. Do you
yes.
understand what I'm saying?
Yes, it's like it's almost as if they don't even notice that you've put so much of yourself into the job that
They don't.
they don't notice that you have lost that part of your life because you were so like that part of your life is your job. You were invested in that part of your life and now that part is gone. And
But
that's a
that's
part
where
that you
I'm
don't.
learning it's up to us to invest in it's not even up to these jobs to recognize. I'm learning that's where we've been conditioned to think that it's up to the job or up to other people to recognize this. I realize it's really actually us.
Yeah.
Like seriously.
Yeah, like we need to decide what we put our effort into and
And
what we
why?
need to decide like yeah, like you need to decide why you're or I shouldn't say the company needs to decide if you're an asset. You should be like I am an asset to this company. I am an asset to your job, to your livelihood. Like you should want me to be this asset, not the other way around. And that's
Because you literally need me.
yes.
You
Yes.
literally need me. You can't do what you do. There's no way you have a bottom line without me helping to produce and sustain that bottom line. So what are we talking about?
Right. And that's what was so wild to me was when in healthcare, when we were trying to make these demands and they're like, well, we can't guarantee your safety. And it's like, what do you mean you can't guarantee my safety when I'm doing the bare minimum here to like, I'm just asking you to put some more guards in the hallways. Can you just do
Right.
that? Can you give us some metal detectors?
And we're talking about $1 billion organizations. I used to work for SSM Healthcare dealing with third party insurance follow up. They made sure they got every bit of their coin every single
Oh,
time.
yes.
They want every claim paid. Stop playing with them. So again, it's crazy to me where I know you have the budget to pay a security guard $23 an hour to stand out in the hallway. Like you have the
Hmm.
budget to hire other than just one security guard, baby.
Yes.
Like, and we
Yes.
know you do. So I
Yes.
think that's the part again that's causing so much rage and frustration and anger for so many people, and I'm assuming even for you because you all you have the money. It's just not a
Yes.
priority to you because you feel like it's not a thing. But
But it's a
again, work
thing.
It is a thing because my life is not just like, oh, it's just dispensable. Okay, worker got stabbed. We'll get another one tomorrow.
Right? Like I'm still a person that it's like if I was stabbed in like if I wasn't stabbed in the hospital and I was brought into the hospital, you would want me to have the utmost care to not sue you. So
Okay,
why could that not be upheld with me? Like I don't understand this.
because y'all about to make me burn this whole hospital down. Stop
That's what I want.
playing. Like,
Literally, I want to walk in just with matches and just
well, I mean, seriously, and I'm thinking, especially after you've given so much, and again, now obviously a lot of it was for you. This is what
mhm.
you mattered to you. This work that you found to
I
be
loved it.
impactful, and you love. And I honestly, some part of me feels like you still do love it, and I feel
Yes.
like some part, maybe some down the line, you may end up back in it. Do you think maybe as time goes on, as you heal more, do you think that maybe something you may be drawn back towards it,
I definitely think
possibly?
if safety becomes a strong suit for hospitals, I think that if a hospital can prove to me that I am a like I can be safe in their environment. I mean, you can't always guarantee complete 100% safety. I understand
Right,
that.
right.
Um, but as long as I'm seeing that you care about me as much as I think that is appropriate, it's like I want you to care about me the way that I think that I would care about you. I want, to have us have a mutual respect to you, not guarantee my safety, like I said, but just ensure that I'm going to be safe coming onto your job. And if I'm
Yep.
not safe, that you're going to take care of me if that ever arises because
I need to know that y'all have more than just a plexiglass holding the sitting up. That's
yes,
catching a sneeze and not catching a knife. Because what we're
yes,
talking about, like,
I need to
yeah,
know that you have, armed security somewhere that can help me at
yeah,
any point, and that just and not even armed security. I mean, we were just asking for metal detectors. That's all we wanted
hmm
was just a simple metal detector, and they said no. And it's just
because just the fact that this woman rode through EMS and still had a knife on her that whole time, that's very scary. And again, obviously, you guys can't, when you're dealing with somebody in a life or death situation, it's not like you're like, let me pat you down and make sure you have nothing. Like, or you don't even expect that. Like,
no,
you
like
getting hell, you getting in here to go with us. We trying to save you. How you what like
and that's the thing
so
too is
yeah.
whenever you call 911 out on the street, usually a cop does get there or tries to get there first. Now out here where we live, in the
hmm
suburbs, a cop might not get here, and that's just the way it is because it's the
Yeah.
suburbs. They don't expect you to have any kind of problems with people attacking you out here. But if you were
Yep.
to get on scene and see a person that was raging or wants to attack you, you immediately see and you call police and they come. But out there, police are on scene whenever you call 911, and she wasn't acting in any certain way that would warrant her being patted down. And then I just think about the poor paramedics that were in the back of the truck with her too, because I was like, if she would have went after them, they would have died. I mean, there's no chance they would have
Literally.
survived because if she would have hit him and went after the driver, that ambulance would have crashed. And so I am not thankful that it happened to me. I'm just saying that there are so many different ways this could have played out, and it's just wild that it still happened the way it happened.
So as a final question then, and I know this is kind of a tough question, but based on what you just stated, what do you feel like you've been able to, I guess, glean from this entire experience now that it's over, and it's not over, but now that that day has transitioned and now that you've moved on with your life to a certain extent, what do you feel like, I guess not what do you feel like, how do you, I'm trying to think of how I want to ask this because I know it's a very sensitive thing, but I guess more so in terms now that that situation and that day's passed and now here you are in your life now, what's next, if anything?
I don't know. I well, I've been working with, and I would talk to Paula Van Zant from KSDK.
Yeah.
She's helped me do a couple pieces with the local news station here. I want to keep working with her for sure. I don't want to give up on trying to make healthcare safer. I just don't know what aspect I'm going to do yet that's going to try to help facilitate safer healthcare environments. Like some of my friends go to Washington D.C. and speak
hmm
out. That's something that I want to do. I've already, like I said, I've spoken to the news. My goal from this experience was I want to help other people not have this happen to them. I want to make sure this doesn't happen again. I want to make sure that, that healthcare workers can go to work and feel safe and focus on their patients. And that is something that wanted to kind of facilitate, I just don't know how, but that is the thing that I want to put out into the universe that I want to help make happen, as well as just I wanted to kind of build something for people like me that get hurt and really don't know what to do next. Because, I mean,
Yeah.
I was lucky enough that I had somebody to say, here's what you need, here's what you get, here's a therapist, here's
Hmm.
resources. Some people get hurt, they're left with nothing. And I can't imagine trying to navigate a workman's comp case without a lawyer. Some people don't even get a lawyer because they're not knowledgeable enough that they need one, which you should always get a lawyer for any kind of legal case. But some people aren't, they don't know. It's their first experience, so educate people on needing lawyers for workman comp cases, educate people that, there are things out there for people with PTSD, for people with depression that, this isn't it's not the end. It's not as bad as it can be. Like, I just want to help people go through what I went through, because I know that if I didn't have support, I don't think it would have been as easy. I don't think I would have made it through. I think I would have been probably put into a padded cell at a
Yep.
loony bin for a while. Not saying that can't still happen, but I'm just saying that
Yeah.
um, that I think if I didn't have the support that I thought was just a given,
Hmm.
um, then I wouldn't have made it through. So I think that I was talking to my therapist about that some people don't get access to PTSD therapy after they've been hurt. And I think that's something that everybody needs. So just kind of building something to once again help people. That's always what I've wanted to do. But I'm just trying to, I guess, navigate through it because I don't know how to do all that kind of stuff. And I don't know what my path will be going with that. But that's what I
Well,
would like to do.
honestly, Kayla, I feel like sometimes it's honestly I wouldn't say the best place to be, but it's right where you need to be for now. Um, because sometimes, again, like just the fact that you're sharing your story now, who knows who this may impact or who may hear this, who may need this, who may be going through something not necessarily similar, but something of a different situation, but having to navigate some very similar things and have to navigate emotions. So whatever your situation is, no matter who you are, wherever you're at, listening to this podcast, like I hope that this story not only motivates you, but encourages you, one, not only to show you the importance of community and having support,
Definitely.
not only showing you the importance in the aspect of having you and knowing what you actually need for real, and advocating for yourself, because that's what you did, Kaylee. You advocated for yourself
Thanks.
continuously, even if it didn't turn out the way. Because I know, I guess, kind of put a bookend on this. I know you ended up moving on with your life
Hmm.
because SSM ended up fighting you
And they
every which
still
way that they
are. They're
could.
still fighting me for we're trying to end the case now, and they don't want to pay me out money, and it's just, I mean, they're going to fight me every way they can.
Why would they not want to pay you out or pay you the
Right?
money when you literally lost? I
Right?
just don't.
Oh my god, the number they offered me first was laughable, and they were like, "Well, this is the best we can do." And I was like, I mean, I'm not trying to put a coin on my life, but no. That's
Then
laughable.
I just I'm gonna keep following this story, and I'm gonna keep checking in. I'm gonna keep up to date with you. Again, I know. Listen, I know, Ari, we all been our siblings at the high school, but I'm gonna stay up with you on this because, again, this has been kind of
Definitely.
mind-boggling to me, and I'm sorry that you and Tammy are both having to navigate this in this way, and having to again be pushed around in this whole process. But one thing I can say is I do believe, and I do know just from talking to you today, that there's light coming out of your story, and that it is bringing light, and that there are other people who are going to go through very similar experiences. And I think, again, as we go further on into the future with COVID, with the pandemic, and all the violence that has come from there since then, that's continuously happening now,
Yes.
there are going to be other people who are going to face the same situation, Kayla. And I think, again, I thank God your life was spared, and that you are here to see another day,
Me
and
too.
that God saw fit for you to tell your story. But I do believe that there's a purpose for it, and a purpose that's bigger than you, me, than any of us.
And I
So I
hope
really,
so. That's the thing that
yeah,
I hope is that I hope that, like, I can, that's the thing, is that if I feel like now if I don't, put something out, like like good into the universe, it's like, what was all this for? Not really what was all of it for, but I want to put something positive out of all of this, because it doesn't have to be, I mean, I went from being so upset for so long that I just, it's possible not to be constantly depressed anymore. And I want people to know that out the gate, that whenever you first get hurt, PTSD is not where you're going to be forever. You're not going to be stuck in that place forever. You're not going to be
yep,
the one worst day that you have. It, you just get up and somehow you keep getting on with it. And it's hard and it sucks, but it just somehow you do. And like I said, I can't imagine not having family, not having just a strong support system around me to deal with it. Cause I would have probably pieced out a long time ago and been like, I'm done. I don't even want to deal with this process anymore, and just given up.
And I can only imagine if you felt like that, he still had support. I can only imagine how many people who don't have support or to have anybody with them and navigating situations like this who can't do that.
Oh, sorry, my computer is dying. I have to go plug it in.
No, you good, Kayla. So anyway, y'all, thank y'all so much for joining us for this episode of Elephant Stories. Well, listen, we at the end. Kayla's computer is tired of it. But thank you all for joining us for this episode. Kayla, thank you so much for
Thank you. Oh my goodness.
joining
sorry, you can't
me.
See me.
Oh no, I can still see it. It's just the background.
Okay.
But I'm just grateful for you sharing this story. I know this was not easy, but thank you so much again, Kayla. And like I said, I'm going to be following your story. And thank you for encouraging people again who may navigate the situation on their own. When you get something started, which I know you will, when you start putting your story more out there and start doing more of these things, let a brother know, because
Absolutely.
I would love to again bring it more on the podcast. Yes. And seriously, get more exposure to it, because this is real work, and I think it really needs to happen, and people really genuinely need it. So I would, if you need me to support you in that way, however I can, I would love to. But I'm beyond grateful for you, and I'm grateful that you're here. You and Tammy.
I just love you. Thank you, Romellus. Like, it's just, thank you for like just having me on this podcast and just letting me just spew my story and just talk about everything that's happened, because it really is, it's cathartic to talk about it sometimes, and to hopefully help somebody that's going through the same thing. And that's really, like I said, if I can help somebody, that's the best part about it.
And that's why I created this platform, to break apart. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, and let's talk about what we all believe we're isolated with. So we're not alone. So no. Thank you so much, friend. I appreciate you. And thank you all for joining me for this episode of Elephant Stories Podcast. If this episode helped you, if you felt like it was something that you feel like could support somebody else, please feel free to share it, send it to somebody, post about it on Facebook, TikTok, wherever. But feel free to share Kayla's story. And again, I would love to hear from some of you all on your thoughts on Kayla's story. If you've been through similar experiences yourself, even if it's something you have encouragement, even to share with Kayla on her journey, feel free to send it in an email. Then you can reach me at info@elephantstoriespodcast.com, or my personal email, Romellus at elephantstoriespodcast.com as well. So thank you all so much. And until next time, don't let that truck hit you on the way out. Alrighty, y'all. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode of Elephant Stories Podcast. It has been a pleasure to not only engage in this story and engage in this conversation, but also to have you all along for the journey, and to have you along to lend your ear and your time and your energy for this story. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Before you go, if you enjoyed today's episode, if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed the story, if you found parts of you in the story, if you feel like this is something that can help support somebody else in their own journey as they're navigating their own story or their own elephant in the room, I would love for you to share this episode. I would love for you to send it to somebody. I would love for you to engage in the content, whether it's dropping your thoughts in our social media platforms on TikTok or Instagram. We want to hear from you, and we want to engage in your thoughts and what are the elephant in the room that you all are dealing with, and what are your thoughts on today's episode. So please feel free to engage in this content. And also, one last thing. I'm not a licensed professional. I'm just a guy who loves sociology. I studied in college. It's been something I've always loved. I've always loved the study of human beings and how we function and how we move and how we exist and show up in the world. So that's it. If you are in need of professional help, or you need seriously some mental services or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to us at info@elephantstoriespodcast.com. We can provide a list of services and some other resources that we have available that we do know of. But please feel free to seek out professional assistance if that's what you actually need. This podcast is in no way a substitute for that. So anyway, thank you all for joining me. I'm grateful for you all to be here. I'm so excited for this first season and to share more content with you all. And until next time, don't let that trunk hit you on the way out. Alrighty, y'all. Thanks for joining me.